Hello, and in this part 2 IELTS speaking video, I'm going to describe a time when you were given incorrect information. You should say when and what it was, where you got it from, how you found out it was incorrect, and explain how you felt about it. So let's take a look at the model answer. I was struggling to think of what to talk about for this topic. Then I suddenly remembered that this happened to me last year, so I'm going to talk about that incident. I was going on a trip to the theatre with some work colleagues, and I had been told that the bus was leaving at 4 p.m. I had taken a day's leave, so was not at work that day. What I didn't know was that the bus pickup time had changed and no one had bothered to tell me. That's a bit harsh. They had forgotten. I don't think it was deliberate. Anyway, when I turned up to work at 4 p.m, everyone was still working. One of my workmates looked at me in horror and said, "Oh no, didn't anyone message you?" I shook my head and she said, "I'm so sorry, but the bus is not leaving until 5 p.m. now." To be perfectly honest, I was fuming because, like I said, I had taken annual leave and had been catching up on lots of jobs at home and then had rushed to get ready to get to work for the scheduled time of 4 p.m. and I was an hour early. I didn't let my feelings show and said, "It's fine, I'll go and grab a coffee." After a strong coffee, I calmed down, and by 5 p.m. I felt a lot better. Actually, it was a good thing that I had been misinformed, because I'd been working hard all day, so the hour to relax with a coffee gave me time to recharge my batteries, and I enjoyed the theatre trip much more. When you've been rushing around all day, it's hard to relax, so I'm grateful to my colleagues for completely forgetting to update me with the revised meeting time. So let's take a look at some of the language. I'm using this verb a lot, to struggle, and I'll tell you each time what it means in the hope that you remember to use it, because it's very useful for writing and speaking, and it means to find something difficult. So I was struggling to think of what to talk about means I couldn't think of what to talk about. It was very hard to think of an idea, and so very useful to use as the opening line for your answer. Then I suddenly remembered. This is a collocation. We suddenly remember something when it suddenly comes in your head and you think, oh right, yes, I can talk about that. To talk about that incident. An incident is an event, a situation, a happening, usually a negative one, so that's why I've referred to it as an incident. In this answer, I've used a lot of past continuous. I've used a lot of past perfect. This is actually past perfect passive. There's past perfect. I'm not going to go through all of the grammar. If you don't understand it, then go and look at a grammar video for past perfect, past continuous, because these will really help you in your IELTS speaking. And you might notice that I've written the words out in full here, but when I say them, I often use a contraction like I'd taken. I've just written them out in full so you can clearly see what tense I'm using, because when I say them, it's often not clear. So I'm not going to go through all the grammar. Let's focus more on the vocabulary. Work colleagues, work mates, I've used both. So try to remember both. Remember lexical range. You need a range of different vocabulary. A day's leave. This is a day's holiday from work, but it's just a little bit more complex. A day's leave. And so what I've said here previously is that the pickup time changed and no one had bothered to tell me. Now I'm being very negative. If somebody doesn't bother to do something, it means they don't put any effort into doing it. So I'm saying nobody cared and nobody told me. But then I'm saying that's a bit harsh. If something is a bit harsh, it's a bit strong. I'm being too critical here and they had just forgotten. I don't think it was deliberate. If something is deliberate, they know that the time has changed and they don't tell you because they want you to arrive early. But I'm saying I don't think it was deliberate. So I don't think they did it to make my life more difficult. Anyway, when I turned up, to turn up is a phrasal verb. It means to arrive. One of my workmates looked at me in horror. You can use various collocations. Looked at me in shock, looked at me in disgust, looked at me in horror. And in horror is like a much stronger way of saying in shock. So she looked very shocked. Didn't anyone message you? It's quite a new verb in English. You could use text or send you a message, but we can also use message as a verb. I shook my head, so this is to move your head from side to side to say no. So I didn't use to be perfectly honest at the start in this one, so I'm going to put it in later. To be perfectly honest, I was fuming. Very useful for this topic where you've been given the wrong information. Means really, really angry. Because like I said, I had taken annual leave. Annual leave just means you'd taken a holiday from work. And I had been catching up on. To catch up on means to do the jobs that you haven't been doing and you need to do. You can catch up on the news when you sit down and you don't know what's happening, and so you find out what's been happening in the world. You can catch up on work. You can catch up on your studies. It means when you're behind with something and then you're getting up to date with it. A very useful phrasal verb. And I had rushed, when you do something very quickly because you don't have enough time to rush. The scheduled time. I never know whether in the UK we say scheduled or scheduled. I think the UK is scheduled and America is scheduled, but both are perfectly acceptable. And it means the planned time. I didn't let my feelings show. This means you didn't show how you felt on your face. And this is a very British thing to do. We go, it's fine, everything is fine. Often your voice tone shows that it's not fine, but we don't actually like to show how we feel. So it's like, it's fine, I'll go and grab a coffee. Quite idiomatic, very good for IELTS speaking, and it just means to get a coffee. After a strong coffee, so we talk about weak coffee and strong coffee. I calmed down. So when you're angry, here I was fuming, and then when you start to calm down, you feel better and you become less angry. And it was a good thing I had been misinformed. To be misinformed is to be given the wrong information. Any verb or noun that starts with miss usually has something to do with wrong in it. So I misread it means I read it wrongly. So here, misinformed, I've been given the wrong information. To recharge my batteries, I just want to get some complex language in here because I find with these describe a time ones, it's very hard to think of complex language and it's more about the grammar. But this is very useful, can be used in lots of topics and I have used it before. So when you're lacking in energy and feeling very tired, just like your phone, you need to recharge your batteries. When you've been rushing around doing things very quickly, all day. I'm grateful, meaning I'm thankful. To forget, we can collocate it with to completely forget, and it just makes it stronger. To update me, to tell me the correct information, the revised meeting time. So it's the rescheduled, the replanned meeting time. Like I said, it's very hard with describe a time ones to think of lots of complex language. Hope I've given you a few ideas of the language you can use. Really, with the describe a time, your grammar has to be good because you're going to be talking in the past. Your past simple must be perfect. And if you can get things like past perfect, past continuous, past perfect continuous, these are really going to impress the IELTS examiner. So if your grammar's not very good, you will struggle in the IELTS exam, so I would recommend working on your grammar before you take it. Right, let's take a look now at a Part 3 question connected with this topic. So they may ask you, what's the difference between giving information by phone and by email? Well, the most obvious difference is that emails are much more practical. Firstly, you can reread an email multiple times and you have a record of the information. And secondly, when someone is giving you info over the phone, you tend to switch off and not really listen to what they are saying. So if it's a question asking about differences, think about the most obvious difference, and this is like the biggest difference, the most obvious difference. Emails are much more practical, so a bit like saying they're more useful. You can reread, so you can read it multiple times, very useful for writing as well as speaking, many times. A record, so in the UK we like to always have a record of something, so if somebody says no, I didn't say that, if you have a record of it you can say but you did, it's here in the email. I keep trying to use info to get you to use it. It's more informal, it makes you sound much more natural as a native like a native speaker of English. You tend to switch off. Tend to is a verb I like using, and it means usually. Tend to switch off. To switch off, like a light, you switch it off, but this means that in your head the lights go off and you stop listening. Your brain shuts down and you don't listen to what the person is saying. To switch off. People switch off when they're watching TV, you can switch off when you're studying because it's boring, so quite a useful phrasal verb. Hope you found this video useful and thank you very much for watching.